He sits in a chair, watching in horror as a massive truck roars past him. In the next second, the outdoor environment shifts instantly to an indoor setting. This isn't a VR experience, but a real-time interactive simulation within a courtroom. That rampaging truck is packed with explosives, and if it isn't intercepted, the courthouse and thousands of lives will be vaporized in 3 minutes. The man in the chair is directing this operation, but his actual identity is a death row inmate. Due to the explosive growth of technology and the expansion of violent crime, Los Angeles took the lead in developing and using an AI trial system called Mercy Court. All violent felons are now subjected to intelligent adjudication by an AI. A single AI chief executive embodies the 3 roles of judge, jury, and executioner. Traditional verdicts have been entirely replaced by this automated AI trial system. In its 2 years of operation, Mercy Court has tried and unalived 18 high-level felons. This deterrent alone has slashed the city's crime rate by 68%. A consensus has formed among the public. Once you enter Mercy Court, your fate is inevitably a death sentence. Chris, who just woke up in the chair, is the 19th suspect to be tried today. He cannot call for a lawyer and can only speak with the AI chief executive, Maddox, sitting opposite him. Chris is completely dazed, having no idea why he woke up in this place. Maddox recognizes Chris. He is a lead detective in the Major Crimes Unit, and he personally caught 8 of the previous 18 felons. Now that he is sitting in the defendant's seat himself, Chris finds the situation utterly nonsensical. Maddox shows no emotional fluctuations, simply telling Chris to take deep breaths and stay calm. As a detective, Chris knows exactly how the AI court functions. He also knows that Mercy Court doesn't make low-level mistakes like grabbing the wrong person. Seeing that Chris has regained some awareness, Maddox informs him that his blood alcohol level is over the limit, and he has been unconscious for over 5 hours. The reason he is locked in this room is that he stands accused of murdering his wife, Nicole. Maddox knows Chris won't believe it, so she plays a video immediately. It is raw footage of paramedics arriving at the scene. The person lying on the ground is his wife, Nicole, and the young girl beside her is his daughter.
Stay as still as possible, okay?
I'm fine. Please help her.
Who did this to you? Who?
Chris.
That's impossible. Oh my God.
Chris's brain is currently in a state of total shutdown. Waking up to find that a detective like himself has been labeled a murderer and the victim is his own wife is too much to process. Maddox ignores his emotional outbursts because the big data system contains his entire profile. Chris was among the first group of detectives to support AI adjudication. In fact, the first felon sentenced to death by the AI, David, was arrested by Chris and his partner. Therefore, Maddox is fully confident that Chris understands the entire AI judicial framework.
Mr. Raven, how do you plead?
Not guilty. I'm not guilty.
Maddox understands that no one would voluntarily confess in this situation. However, Chris's suspicion index is currently at 97.5%, which is essentially a death warrant. Maddox opens the Los Angeles cloud database for Chris. It contains all records related to Chris's associates, including private information. According to the law, Chris can access any information he wants to prove his innocence during the trial, though the hope is slim. As long as his requests pertain to the case, Maddox will open all resources for him to use or control. This window of time is exactly 90 minutes. Within 90 minutes, if Chris can find evidence to clear his name, he can leave. Otherwise, once time runs out, the chair he is sitting on will emit lethal sound waves to unalive him on the spot. Chris keeps insisting he is innocent, but looking at the ticking timer, he realizes the AI only recognizes hard evidence. Maddox advises him not to waste time and opens the current evidence brief. Surveillance footage shows that at 8:51 this morning, Chris drove a truck to the police station, but he didn't get out. Instead, he drove back home. He arrived home at 9:22. Nicole saw him, went inside, and locked the door. After Chris knocked, Nicole told him to leave, clearly indicating a heated argument was taking place. Chris then punched out the surveillance camera at the door, took a key from his car, and let himself into the house. 26 minutes later, Chris opened the door and left. By 10:19, roughly half an hour later, their daughter Britt returned home. Upon entering, she let out a scream, finding her mother critically injured on the floor. According to the scene analysis, the killer is right-handed. The cause of death was a sharp blade passing through the vertebrae and damaging the liver. Nicole eventually succumbed to her injuries despite rescue efforts. Chris is right-handed, and Nicole's blood was found on his clothes. and it was fresh. His fingerprints were also found on the murder weapon. After leaving the house, surveillance shows Chris didn't return to the station, but went to a bar to start drinking. When he was apprehended by other officers, he even engaged in physical combat with them. The two sides brawled for several minutes until Chris fled the bar and was knocked unconscious by a colleague with a baton. That is the reason he was out cold for over 5 hours. Chris refuses to admit to any of it, claiming he doesn't remember these events. Maddox reminds him to consider if this memory loss includes the act of unaliving his wife. Blacking out from drinking is common, but surveillance footage doesn't lie, and those 26 minutes at home are the key.
I have learned one constant in this court, and that is that everyone lies. Why did you return home?
Maddox asks this to figure out Chris's motive based on existing logic and evidence. However, Chris is in a state of complete collapse and cannot focus his mind to think. Hearing that he wants to speak with his daughter, Maddox tells him that minors are not allowed to participate in court trials unless they witnessed the deed. But Chris is permitted to review Britt's related records.
She needs me.
She is with your late wife's parents.
Want to talk to my daughter.
Sensing Chris's explosive emotions, Maddox experiences a brief moment of silence. She then helps Chris draft a text message stating he is currently in Mercy Court and asking if she is willing to talk, requesting her to call within the hour. This act actually represents a slight flicker of fluctuation in the AI, Maddox. She continues by saying he cannot proactively call Britt, but he can call his friend Rob. Rob is Nicole's boss and Chris's close friend. They are both members of a support group for alcoholics. However, this conversation yields little useful information. Chris simply cries while insisting he isn't the killer, while Rob merely expresses his condolences. After the call ends, Chris asks to call back, wanting Rob to prove that he and his wife were in love to explain to Maddox that he had no reason to take her life. But Maddox immediately pulls up his 20-year marriage history. He and Nicole started dating 20 years ago, married on a beach 3 years later, and had their daughter a year after that. The family had been in a state of bliss until a mission where his partner, Ray, lost his life. When Chris returned home, he became a different person and spiraled into alcoholism. His drinking made his temper incredibly volatile. Text messages between his wife and friends recorded at least 50 instances of Chris losing control in the last 6 months. This even included footage captured by his daughter on her phone showing the couple fighting. In that footage, Chris was holding a paring knife. Immediately after, Maddox pulls up Britt's video records.
I can come get you out of there if you want. You know I can make that happen.
Who the hell is this guy?
Abby, is that like your Bob to stop me?
Yeah, maybe. I heard my mom talking to her friend about getting a divorce. Really hope she meant that shit. She used that? I think my dad's home. I'm out.
Chris is somewhat startled by this video. Maddox shows him 2 Instagram accounts. Both belong to Britt, but the one on the right is a burner account hidden from her parents. The version parents see is the good girl, while the hidden one shows a completely different side of Britt. The last video posted on the burner account was from the night before Nicole died. Britt thought her father had come home and hung up on her boyfriend, but after leaving her bedroom, she found the house empty. Just then, Britt, having received the text, calls. Chris quickly wipes his tears and answers the call. Britt says she was the one who pulled out the dagger, believing that if she hadn't, her mother might have been saved. Looking at his equally broken daughter, Chris comforts her, saying it wasn't her fault. Britt doesn't understand why Chris is locked in Mercy Court. Deep down, she still doesn't believe her father is the killer, but her grandfather quickly takes the phone and hangs up. Because in the past 2 years of trials, not a single suspect who entered Mercy Court has walked out alive, so no one believes Chris is innocent. However, seeing his daughter has allowed Chris's mindset to stabilize somewhat. As a lead detective, he knows very well that the countdown is practically a formality. All suspects are evaluated by the AI combining evidence. Anyone with a suspicion index over 80% is thrown in here. In other words, if there were evidence to reduce Chris's suspicion, the AI would have already factored it into the evaluation. AI doesn't lie, and it doesn't hide information. But Chris knows he isn't the killer, which proves the real culprit must have evaded the AI's eyes and the cloud data. Maddox's subtle reminders for him to use his last chance suggest she might be looking to evolve her own logic. A situation where a recognized good cop is caught in a case with ironclad evidence is a paradox for the AI. Chris seems to catch Maddox's underlying meaning and takes a deep breath. Since he isn't the killer, as both a detective and a husband, he must find the true culprit. At Chris's request, Maddox connects him with his partner, Jacqueline. As the image locks and the scene is reconstructed, Jacqueline is still at the crime scene, Chris's home. After receiving the call, Maddox first clarifies that this is an official court call, requiring Jacqueline's cooperation in gathering case-related information before handing the floor to Chris. Chris first reviews the collected scene data and then asks Jacqueline to walk through the scene once more. With Maddox's approval, the scene scanning function is activated. In the next moment, Chris is transported into an immersive, first-person perspective of his home. The reconstruction reveals a shattered vase on the dining room floor. Chris remains silent upon seeing this image. He then directs Jacqueline to the kitchen. Scanning the kitchen reveals the exact position of the body and a footprint in the blood. Analysis confirms the footprint belongs to Britt. Fragments of a shattered plate are also found on the counter. Based on the angle and position, it is speculated that Nicole was throwing the plate at her attacker in resistance. It was at this moment the killer grabbed the paring knife that was later found in the victim's body. However, the fingerprints on that knife match Chris's perfectly. Chris then pulls up the fiber data from the scene, only to find that the recovered hairs are also his own. Since he is always home and is the primary user of that knife, he doesn't find these findings unusual. It simply suggests the killer was brilliant at hiding and evading detection. Jacqueline remarks that it currently looks like a textbook crime of passion. The theory is that the couple argued. The man lost his mind in a fit of rage and impulsively unalived his wife. Chris agrees with the logic of the theory, but not with the idea that he was the killer. He believes another man was involved in a crime of passion with his wife. He requests to pull up Nicole's call history. Maddox immediately displays Nicole's contact list. Chris focuses on the numbers that were not saved as contacts. Records show 33% of calls were to Chris, 26% to their daughter, 10% to her parents, and the rest to her workplace, Viking Shipping. Chris then remembers that during their argument, his wife appeared to be texting, a moment captured in their daughter's video. Re-examining Britt's video, Chris notices Nicole did indeed turn away to send a message. However, Maddox states that scans of Nicole's phone show no messages sent or received at that specific time. There are also no records of Nicole owning a second phone. Jacqueline immediately asks her colleagues if a second phone was found in the house. At this moment, they all ask Chris if he has ever called Nicole's other number. Maddox pulls up Chris's phone data and finds an unnamed number in records from 6 months ago. That number had called Chris once. Maddox attempts to dial the number. Jacqueline hears nothing inside the house, but officers outside report a sound coming from the car. Jacqueline rushes outside, smashes Nicole's car window, and finds a ringing phone hidden inside. It is a black market phone whose data is not uploaded to the cloud. There is only one frequently dialed number on this device. Maddox tracks the number and finds it also belongs to a black market phone. When Maddox calls, the person on the other end hangs up immediately upon hearing it is Mercy Court calling. The location is traced to the Red District. Maddox orders Jacqueline to head to the location immediately on her flying motorcycle. This is a critical discovery for the truth. However, this find only lowers Chris's suspicion index from 97.5% to 96.7%. Though the drop is small, it is a start. Jacqueline arrives at the Red District and quickly locates the man trying to flee. The moment his face is scanned, the man bolts into a building. While police give chase, Maddox pulls up the man's profile. His name is Patrick, 36, an assistant chef with a record for refusing to pay rent and social fraud. Seeing the suspect flee onto the roof, Jacqueline deploys a small drone. The drone tracks Patrick to the helipad, where Jacqueline finally tackles and subdues him. Patrick explains he only ran because he was terrified of Mercy Court's reputation. Maddox demands he tell everything to clear his name. Patrick admits he was having an affair with Nicole, but insists he is not a killer. Video records provided by Maddox confirm they had multiple secret meetings. However, at the time of the murder, Patrick was at work in the kitchen, giving him a perfect alibi. Chris concludes that Patrick is definitely not the killer. Despite this, Patrick is detained for 48 hours for resisting arrest. Instead of restoring Chris's original suspicion index, Maddox raises it to an unprecedented 98%. Maddox's logic is that Chris already knew about the affair but didn't know the man's identity, so he unalived his wife in a jealous rage. The theory suggests he only used the court's resources to find his wife's lover. For Chris, the cost of such a goal would be far too high. The situation becomes incredibly delicate. Chris must convince Maddox that he is searching for a killer, not just a lover. He begins to calmly narrate the true story of his past. 2 years ago, he and his partner Ray intercepted a vehicle. As they prepared to check the car, Nicole called, and Ray told Chris to stay in the cruiser while he handled what seemed like a routine stop. That moment of carelessness led to a tragedy. A stunned Chris got Ray into the car and called for backup while chasing the suspects. During the pursuit, Ray stopped breathing. In the heat of the chase, Chris prioritized the mission, crashing into the suspect's car. One suspect was knocked unconscious, while the other fled to a nearby beach. Chris followed protocol and arrested the man instead of shooting him. He deeply regretted that decision when the suspect was eventually acquitted in court. After this, Chris turned to alcohol, and his emotions became unstable. His conflicts with his wife were entirely fueled by his drinking. This morning, Chris drove to the station but realized a hidden bottle of alcohol was missing, so he drove straight back home. Believing Nicole had hidden his liquor, he intentionally smashed her favorite vase. Nicole cut her hand while cleaning up the shards, and Chris got blood on his clothes while helping her bandage the wound. While this explanation has some merit, it is difficult to prove. First, Chris didn't lead with this confession, and second, there is no footage of his 26 minutes inside the house. Although Maddox lacks emotions, her massive database allows her to understand human patterns. Based on Chris's expressions and behavior, she begins to lean toward believing he is innocent. However, this belief cannot change the outcome without physical evidence. Otherwise, her programming will proceed with the execution. Chris realizes he must pull himself together and reorganize his thoughts. He asks himself 3 questions. Who is the suspect? What is the motive? How was it done? He asks Maddox to display everyone who had contact with his wife. Facing a screen full of faces, he uses the process of elimination. He removes Patrick, his in-laws, and then divides friends and colleagues into 2 groups. There are 16 colleagues and 9 friends. Finding one killer among 25 people is daunting. He then recalls Patrick saying that Chris never truly cared for Nicole or listened to her troubles. This leads Chris to realize that one reason Nicole looked elsewhere was that Patrick was willing to invest the time to let her vent. Driven by this thought, he immediately asks Maddox to contact the detention center. After verifying his identity, an officer brings the phone to Patrick. Under Chris's questioning, Patrick reveals that Nicole often complained to him about immense work pressure. It seems her superior tasked her with investigating missing cargo, a matter that had been deeply troubling her. Nicole's company specializes in transporting chemical products, some of which are incredibly valuable. Hearing this, Chris hangs up and immediately eliminates everyone in Nicole's circle of friends from his list of suspects. He concludes that the culprit is most likely among her colleagues. Consequently, Chris reestablishes contact with Jacqueline, instructing her to head to Nicole's workplace first. After ending the call, he tells Maddox that human investigators sometimes rely on pure intuition. He then requests a playback of the video records from the party held at his house the previous weekend. All of Nicole's colleagues were present at this gathering, but after careful observation, Chris finds no one acting suspiciously. He notes that while 46 cars passed his house on the morning of the murder, not a single one stopped. Since today is Monday and the party was Sunday, a terrifying possibility strikes Chris. The killer hid inside the house over the weekend and never left. Thus, he asks Maddox to pull up the records of everyone who drove to his home on the day of the party. Surveillance shows a total of 4 vehicles, one of which belongs to Rob, carrying 4 people including himself. Upon seeing this, Chris immediately has Maddox connect him with Rob. During the call, Chris asks him if the 3 people who arrived in his car on Sunday also left with him. Unexpectedly, Rob informs him that the 3 passengers all called separate rides to return home. Chris then asks Rob who failed to show up for work this Monday morning. Rob replies that everyone arrived on time, with the sole exception of Nicole. After hanging up, Chris reflects for a moment before pulling up the video captured by his daughter again. He suspects the hidden killer made some noise, which led his daughter to mistakenly believe he had returned home. If this is true, the camera likely captured something significant. Before watching, Chris asks Maddox for the exact time his daughter recorded the video. Maddox retrieves the information, showing it was filmed at 9:15 the previous night. However, at 10:07 last night, Chris was still at the police station. This confirms the noise was definitely not caused by him. Under this premise, Chris reconnects with his daughter to ask if she noticed anything unusual while filming, while simultaneously re-examining the footage. During Britt's narration and within the frames, Chris suddenly notices that the door to the basement is slightly ajar. By zooming in, both Chris and Maddox spot a hand in the act of closing the door. With this lead, Chris immediately eliminates all women among Nicole's colleagues, as well as the men who drove themselves home on Sunday. Only 6 suspects remain. At this point, Maddox reminds him to think linearly and not to forget Patrick's mention of the missing cargo, which is vital information. Realizing the significance, Chris has Maddox access Viking Shipping's back-end database. They first open Nicole's email history and search for the keyword missing. Sure enough, they find a conversation regarding the disappearance of a chemical product called UG. UG stands for urea granules, a common cargo item for Viking Shipping. Continuing the search, they find an email where Nicole states that the matter should be kept secret between the three of them. Further digging reveals that a man named Holt was also aware of the situation. Chris then begins an investigation into the company's records. He finds that for the past 6 months, the quantity of every shipment was incorrect. While the physical orders and billing were accurate, every pickup included an extra 50-kilogram container. This indicates that someone tampered with the company's database to conceal the theft of the UG. Over 6 months, 300 kilograms of UG have been stolen, which can be processed into illicit goods. Since Holt's name was mentioned, Chris decides to check if he ever spoke with Nicole. After scanning Holt's emails, he finds that Holt once requested a private meeting with her. He immediately pulls up the company surveillance footage from the time of that meeting. The audio reveals that Holt had also discovered the theft, but was pressuring Nicole to remain silent. Nicole wanted to report it to the authorities, and the two failed to reach an agreement. Following this lead, Chris investigates Holt's financial situation and is stunned by what he finds. Holt has a massive amount of overdue credit card debt. Among all the red, delinquent accounts, only one is green, showing a money transfer from his boss, Rob. At this point, Chris's suspicion index finally begins to drop as Holt becomes the primary suspect. To avoid alerting the target, Chris calls Rob again, but unexpectedly, Holt answers the phone. Holt claims Rob has stepped out and that he will go look for him. After Holt walks out, Chris and Maddox discuss a plan to force a confession from him. They know Jacqueline will be on site in 4 minutes, making it unlikely he can escape. A moment later, Holt returns to the room and says he couldn't find Rob. Chris warns Holt to stop wasting time, stating he already knows about his massive bank debts. Faced with this, Holt begins to waver. Under the synchronized gaze of the AI trial, Holt finally confesses the truth. He admits his debt stems from gambling and that Rob would occasionally give him money to help out. Because of this, he felt he owed Rob a favor. When he discovered Rob was stealing cargo, he met with Nicole to persuade her not to expose him. Suddenly, Chris asks where Rob went. Holt says he doesn't know, only that Rob took the morning off, making him the only person absent from the office. He adds that after the Sunday party ended, Rob asked him to drive his car away. This implies Rob did not leave in his own vehicle. With this information, everything clicks for Chris. He immediately contacts Jacqueline and orders her to arrest Rob at once. Simultaneously, Maddox pulls up the video of Holt driving the car away, revealing that Rob was hiding in the trunk the whole time. This confirms Holt's story, and all suspicion now points directly at Rob. Under Chris's direction, the first wave of police surrounds Rob's residence. They breach the house only to find it completely empty. While the tactical team searches the premises, Maddox monitors every intersection's surveillance, trying to locate a freight truck with the Viking logo. Inside the house, officers discover a strange photograph. The frame holds 2 pictures of Rob as a child, but one of them has been torn in half. Sensing something is wrong, Chris has Maddox search for a match for the person in the missing half. Meanwhile, the tactical team finds a small warehouse in Rob's backyard containing maps and numerous chemicals. Chris suddenly wonders what Rob plans to do with a truckload of illicit materials. It is impossible that he intends to simply sell them openly. If he went to the Red District, the cargo would be snatched up before he even exited the truck. Maddox then notes that Rob holds a master's degree in electrical engineering and is an expert in chemistry. Just then, the officers on site find a specific book. Based on its contents, Maddox immediately analyzes that UG can be used to manufacture not only illicit goods, but also bombs. Furthermore, nitric acid, another chemical needed for the mixture, is also a product frequently shipped by Viking. At this realization, Chris is 100% certain that Rob has constructed a truckload of explosives. While in a state of shock, Maddox locks onto a high-speed truck heading toward the city center. Simultaneously, she finds the other half of the torn photograph. The boy on the left is Rob, and the boy on the right is David. Upon seeing this, Chris is utterly paralyzed. David was the very first man he arrested and sent to Mercy Court to be unalived in that very chair. David and Rob are brothers who grew up in an orphanage together before Rob was adopted and they were separated. It is now crystal clear that Rob is here for revenge. Based on drone footage, Chris realizes Rob is speaking to someone. After playing back the audio, Chris senses it isn't an accomplice Rob is talking to. Immediately, Chris asks Maddox to call his daughter again. Since Rob is seeking revenge against him, Britt is likely to be caught in the crossfire. Maddox realizes this as well and dials the number, but Nicole's father answers instead. Hearing this, Chris has Maddox pull up the exterior surveillance of his home. Sure enough, just a few minutes ago, Rob forcibly kidnapped Britt. Seeing this scene, Chris immediately shouts to Jacqueline, telling her to pursue Rob. Suddenly, the officers on the scene spot a timer.
Get out.
Watching the simulated ruins of the explosion before him, Chris has no idea what to do. The AI, Maddox, is also struck with shock. Based on the calculated destructive power, that truckload of bombs could easily level half the city. Fortunately, Jacqueline is mostly unharmed and immediately begins the pursuit under Chris's direction. At the same time, Chris's suspicion index drops instantly to 0%. However, gaining his freedom also means Chris loses his eligibility to mobilize the AI's full resources. To save his daughter and intercept Rob, Chris demands the trial continue. Only by continuing the process can all of Maddox's resources be mobilized by him. Maddox is caught in a choice between conflicting rules. If Chris continues to sit in the chair, it will still emit lethal sound waves once the countdown ends. For Maddox, this is also a gamble on their success.
Everything you deduced, the facts made it appear impossible. Your gut instincts were right.
Yeah, I was right.
Hearing this, Chris knows the AI has evolved and now possesses human-like emotional judgment. With only 9 minutes remaining, Maddox agrees to let him stay and helps mobilize the entire city's police force. She grants him the highest level of command authority. Intercepting a fully loaded semi-truck is no easy task, as any police car that catches up is sent flying. The truck charges forward, tearing through the busy downtown area toward the city center without stopping. Civilians in the vicinity are already being caught in the crossfire and injured. Facing this situation, the Special Task Force deploys a helicopter to attempt a forced hostage rescue. Once the truck reaches the bridge, an officer descends quickly from the helicopter. Officers in the escort cars try to force Rob to stabilize his speed with their weapons drawn. Unexpectedly, Rob swerves violently, flipping a nearby police car over.
Fall back! Fall back! Forward!
After this rescue attempt fails, Jacqueline forcibly takes over command and orders the interception team to deploy bomb drones. Chris becomes instantly frantic upon hearing this, knowing his daughter is on that truck. He argues that this is simply choosing a quick answer to a difficult problem. Jacqueline explains that compared to thousands of people being vaporized, a forced stop is the optimal solution. After speaking, the special police officers deploy the bomb drones. Chris pleads with her not to do it, but Jacqueline chooses to execute the order anyway.
It's the wrong move and you know it.
Havelock, send it now.
No, Havelock, listen to me. We've got the smartest judge in the world here. Let her make the call.
If he approaches at sufficient speed, everyone in this building and in the truck will be killed.
Please, Maddox.
No.
Not Britt.
Chris, I should not interfere with this.
Havelock, don't do it! Move out! No detonation!
Maddox does not answer Chris's question, and the current moment does not allow for discussion. The truck, having evaded interception, reaches the vicinity of the courthouse, which is already being evacuated. With no other choice, Chris has Jacqueline fly directly in front of Rob's truck. Seeing his daughter inside the truck, Chris forces himself to stay calm and tries to convince Rob to turn back. Rob tells him that David, the first felon Chris ever caught, was actually innocent. He screams that no one cared and no one listened. Therefore, he must let Chris and the entire court taste that same pain today. Hearing this, neither Chris nor Maddox issue an order, but Jacqueline, who is right there on the scene, opens fire. She intends to gun down Rob to force the truck to a halt.
What are you doing?
Bullshit! What do you think? I had a shot and I took it!
Britt is in the truck. Are you nuts?
Stop!
Oh, Jesus, oh God!
Under Maddox's intervention, Jacqueline is hurled from the flying motorcycle. Rob successfully crashes the truck into Mercy Court. Instead of detonating the bombs instantly, Rob takes Britt hostage and unalives the remaining security guard. At this moment, less than 10 seconds remain on the trial clock.
I will assist you however I can.
Having been freed from his restraints, Chris immediately heads to the lobby via the elevator. Once the elevator opens, he quickly grabs a bulletproof vest. He puts on his headset to maintain communication with Maddox. Seeing his daughter held hostage by Rob, Chris emerges with his hands raised. Facing the culprit he blames, Rob pulls out the remote detonator. He intends to return this place and everyone in it to the dust. Just as he is about to trigger the explosion, Maddox appears on the large screen. She suggests that if Rob claims David is innocent, he should prove the court was wrong. Rob has always been obsessed with this, which is why he planned this revenge, so he agrees to Maddox's proposal. He explains that 2 years ago, he found David in a state of desperation and gave him a phone and cash. Shortly after, a murder occurred in the area where David was living. However, Rob was on the phone with David at the exact time of the murder, so he is 100% certain David is not the killer. He believes the call records alone can prove the truth. While Rob speaks, Maddox explains to Chris that the bomb can be disarmed by removing the batteries from the remote.
You are not listening to me!
I am listening very closely, Mr. Nelson.
Maddox then explains that when David was captured, no phone was found on him or in his home. Furthermore, David's fingerprints were found on the murder weapon found on the victim. Hearing this, Rob's emotions reach a boiling point. He believes that AI doesn't care about human life, that Mercy Court is nothing more than an execution institution. During his furious explanation, Britt takes the opportunity to bite him. Taking advantage of this opening, Chris immediately lunges forward. During the struggle, Rob loses his advantage. Once he is pinned down, Chris successfully removes the batteries from the detonator. Chris then switches positions, picking up a pistol and aiming it directly at Rob's head. The criminal who caused his partner's death is still free, and now the man who unalived his wife is right before him. Chris grips the gun, desperately wanting to end Rob's life with a single shot. However, under the intervention of Maddox and his daughter, Chris finally controls his emotions with a furious roar.
I was on the phone with him the whole time, Chris. I called your precinct!
Chris is surprised when the newly arrived Jacqueline suddenly opens fire, and he immediately moves to stop her. At this point, Rob, lying on the ground, says he called the station to report that David had a phone. He claims the call records would have proven David's innocence. After Maddox retrieves the historical logs, she finds that a female officer at the precinct did indeed take that call. That officer was Jacqueline. Everyone is stunned as they investigate Jacqueline's police records. It turns out Jacqueline had taken David's phone from the evidence room and secretly threw it off the bridge.
He buried the phone.
We needed the first trial to be a home run. We need mercy, Chris. We need these scumbags scared. Look at what it's done for us. You've destroyed all if this gets out.
We need justice, Jack. Not this.
Chris uses his own ordeal to prove his innocence and places handcuffs on Jacqueline, with the justice still in his heart. While AI can efficiently search and summarize, it is still too early for it to completely replace human judgment. Both Maddox and Chris can make mistakes, and those mistakes create vulnerabilities. Through this trial, Maddox has also learned many human ways of doing things. She deletes the records of Chris's interrogation. However, in Chris's eyes, an AI with such a human touch might actually be more terrifying.